This is Gemara Metziah Daf Chof Beis, and today's shir, the shir for Tainus Esther, has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf in honor of Daniel Ben-ציון ben Yehuda on the occasion of his 70th birthday. B'siyat Shmaya, we wish Daniel Ben-ציון ben Yehuda Arichos Yamim V'Shanim, him and his entire mishpacha shall only see nachas in with him and with everyone else, and B'siyata Dishmaya, the learning of the entire Chabura should bring not only Daniel Ben-ציון ben Yehuda to Arichas Yamim V'Shanim, but to his mishpacha, to the entire Daf mishpacha, on this incredible day of Tainus Esther, B'siyata Dishmaya. We're holding on the bottom of Chav Aleph Amid Beis, in the middle of the lengthy and famous discussion of Yush Sheloi Midas, which began at the top of this Amid, to remind ourselves, as the top Rashi and the top of the Amid taught us, that we're talking about an item that the stama is, one will be miyayish. Yish means one will give up hope. You lose an item. Sometimes you feel you'll get it back, whether it's because there's a simon or other reasons or other circumstances, and other times you feel you're not going to get back the item. But the question is, Shaloi Midas, you don't know about it yet. When you find out, you're going to give up, you don't know about it yet. So we had a machlekes, Abaye and Rava. Abaye said, Lo have a yush. Rava said it is yush. We explained, B'davar sheyesh by simin. If there's a simin, everyone agrees it's not a yush. So everyone agrees, of course, you're going to hope to get it back. The question is, and as well, bezuta shel yam, ushlita shel nar, the opposite, an area overflow of the river, etc. Even if there is a simin, then still, Hashem says, you're never going to get it back, so you're miyayish. The machloikas is b'davar she'ein boy simin. An item without a simin, but you just don't know that you lost it yet. Abaya Amar Lo Yish. Why? Because the moment you find out, because you don't know yet that you dropped it. Rava says it is Yish. Why? Because as soon as you find out that you dropped it, you're going to be miyayish. We began a bunch of lengthy rayos back and forth yesterday. We continued 2 lines to the bottom, moving on to the last line. Tashemaz, the Gemara continues to try to prove Abaya v'Rava, Abaya lo have yush, Rava have yush. Tashema, says the Gemara, Ha'ganav shenatal mizeh v'nasan lezeh. In the case of a ganav who took for one person and gave to someone else, V'chein gazlon shenatal mizeh v'nasan lezeh, or a gazlon, which is one who steals openly, takes from one guy and gives to the next guy. V'chein yardein, as we turn over to Chav Aleph, Chav Beis Amar Aleph, and so to the river. What does the river do? It does the same thing. Flushes away an item, and it deposits it elsewhere. The halacha is, says the Gemara, that which is taken, and wherever it ends up, the recipient is allowed to use the item. So says the Gemara, Bishlan Gazlan v'Yardain. I understand the robbers. I understand that it's taken from A and it's given to B. The owner realized that he lost the item, realized it was stolen, and he says, okay, he's miyayish and he's not going to get it back. Eleganov Mika Chazile de miyayish. By a gazlan, someone who steals in front of his face, he says, okay, I'm never getting back this item. By a gazlan, he doesn't know about it. Is he miyayish? So what do we see? See, even though he doesn't know about it, still, Mashanatal Natal, Mashanasan Nasan, seemingly indicating, even though it's Shaloi Midas, still, it's going to be allowed to be kept. A raya to Rava, Yesh Shaloi Midas, seemingly is Have Yosh, and that's the reason why the person can keep it. Explains the Gemara 4 lines down. No, when it said Ganov, it meant armed robbers, and therefore it's armed robbers, and therefore in all scenarios he saw it stolen from in front of him, and that is the reason why he really is miyayish. Says the Gemara, the obvious kashi achi, I knew gazlan is the same thing as a gazlan. Answers the Gemara, Trey Gavni Gazlan. There's two types of Gazlan. You're right. Both of them were stolen in front of the guy's face. Just one of them is by armed robbery, and one is not. But in a Chanami, the Gemara is concluding that they're both very similar cases. So there is no Raya. Tashema. Now, 6 lines down, the Gemara flips the coin and tries to bring a Raya that lo have a Yush. Shatav Nara or Karav Itav Avanav. If the river washed away one's beams, one's wood, one's stones, Vinasnai B'toich Sadr Acher, and deposits these items in someone else's field, Hare Elu Shalai. Why? The field that they're deposited in is allowed to keep these items. Why, says the Brisa? Because there is Yosh, the owner despairs of getting back these items when he sees the river wash them away. Explains the Gemara the obvious implication. It seems it's only because the owner is proactively miyayesh hastama. But if not, if it was just a stam, if he just didn't say anything, loy would not be a yush. Arayat abaya. Answers Gemara, no, you know why it's not yush? Because in this case, the owner could have saved the item. Says the Gemara, what's that? If that's the case, the end of that brisa said, if the owner is chasing after the item as they're being washed away, then chayiv lahachzir, then you have to return it. But I asked the Gemara, but if the owner is able to save the item, it has nothing to do if the owner is running after it, even if he's not running after it. But if he's able to get it back, you should have to return it to him. Explains the Gemara, it's difficult to get it back. So therefore, if miradfim, you see him running lo yayish, he clearly is not miyayish. In miradfim, then ayu miyayish, he is miyayish. Says the Gemara, no raya to Abaya. Tashima, the Gemara continues this time trying to bring a raya to Rava. Case Adamru Atayrim Shalai Midas. If someone takes of Truma without Das, then what? Trumasai Truma. The halach is if someone takes of Das without, if someone takes of Truma, without Das of whom? Of the owner, it works. Harei Shiar L'Techsa the Chaveira, if I go into your field, Velikate, and I pick v'taram and I take of truma shalaber just without any permission. So gazel ain't truma say truma. If you, the owner, are bothered by this because you feel I'm stealing from you, then it's not a good truma. Vim lav. If you're not feeling that it's gazel, then truma say truma. It's got to be a good truma. Continues the Gemara. So that's the case of the brisa. But so far we haven't proved anything. And how do we know? How do we know whether the owner feels it's gazela or not? Explains the Gemara. As I'm in your field, I'm busy separating truma on your behalf. You come down and you see me playing with your truma, playing with your wheat, separating truma. Umatzai, and you find the guy separating the truma. V'amar, and you tell him, what are you doing over here? Go take truma from even the better stuff. So halacha is if there is actually better stuff, truma say truma, then it's a good truma. Vim lav, if there's not actually better stuff, then ain't truma say truma. Then it doesn't work, because then we assume he was just basically telling him to go fly a kite. Look to abaylim. Now let's say the owner sees this guy separating truma, and the owner himself takes some items, and he adds it on. Again, I'm in your backyard. I'm busy separating truma from your produce. You come back. You're like, hey, what are you doing? So if you say, go give the kohanim even from the better stuff, then it depends if you actually have better stuff. But if you go and you see me adding on wheat and counting and giving wheat, and you go and you take a few items and you add it on top of the pile, then of course Benkach in all scenarios, Truma say Truma, because you're clearly showing that you're happy with the story. Continues the Gemara. So v'chinim should be in the case where he said go take from better stuff. If there is better stuff, Truma say Truma. Amai asking her why is that? Benaditarim. At the moment that he was Tyrem, at the moment that he separated the Truma, the owner did not know that he was doing it for you. Only subsequently did he come, and subsequently did he show that he was happy. So what do we see? We see that even though at the moment of the hafrosh, at the moment of the separating, he did not know, because subsequently he showed he's happy, it's good. Classical case of Yeshaloi Midas. When he did it, it was without das, and yet we see it works. Araya to Rava. Tirgama Rava, Liba Dabaya Rava explained that no, I could even tell you and explain the Raisa according to Abaya. Tishavye Shliach. Says Rava, I'll tell you the case could work according to Abaya that he made it into a Shliach. And the Gemara, meaning he made him into a Shliach to separate Shuma for him prior. It wasn't Shaloi Midas. The Gemara says, Hachinami mistavra. And this indeed is logical. If you're going to tell me, like we thought, that you never made me a shliach, I just popped into your backyard and started taking off truma. Says the Gemara, miyavi truma say truma. Is it a good truma? V'atem gamatem amar Achmana, says the Torah, with regard to taking of truma atem. And for there we learn now the Rabbi Shluchachem that we include a shliach take of truma ma'atem l'daitchem. Just like when you take of truma, you need das av shluchachem l'daitchem. So says the Gemara, so must be alachamay skinan kigoin tishav yeshliach. Must be, and it's the raya to the Rava's teretz on behalf of Abaya, showing that the Bryce is not a raya to Rava. What must be the case that you made him into a shliach? V'amarlei ziltarim go take of truma v'lei amarlei Torah mehani. You didn't tell him which stuff to take of truma. Ustama de balabayis. And what's the stam? What do we assume? Kitar mi beinis utarim, that you take from the middle grade. And v'azali uvitarim mi yafos. And he didn't take from the middle, he went to take for the best stuff. Now we can understand more what's going on. The Balabai said, go take from the better stuff. So therefore, and if there is indeed better stuff, Truma works because he shows he's happy. So says the Gemara, no raya to Rava, as Rava could say, the case is that he made a mace shliach. Continues the Gemara, I made him a rezuch of Ravash. They came to a place called Bustana. Came Lebustana to Mari Bar Isik. Bustana is the orchard of Mari Bar Isik. I see Arise Tamari Virimaini. The sharecropper brought out dates and pomegranates for Shadi Kamai when he placed it in front of them. Mari Bar Isik, the owner of the orchard, came. We found the Marmalade Larisi, he told his Aris, the sharecropper, why didn't you give these rabbis even better stuff? So Amrle Amemar Ravashi, just now Amemar Ravashi, who they were eating this stuff the whole time, said to Marzucha, who was not, now that you see the Baal Bayis is happy, so certainly now why are you not eating? And they quoted our Bryce, and then the officer Chuma. Amar Leho, so Ravashi responded, Amar Leho, Hachi Amar Rava, Lo Amar Lecha, Klachi Silyafois Elini Truma Bilvad. That halacha is a halacha that only else for truma. Why? Mishum de mitzvah ho, because it's a mitzvah. V'nichale, and one is happy to do a mitzvah with better stuff. Halacha mishum kisitufa ho, damar hachi. Over here, the owner was just embarrassed, and that's the reason why he did it. But said Marzucha, not necessarily it did a raya that he really wanted it to be done. So we continue our quest in our machlekes Abaye and Rava for a raya. Tashima, says the Gemara. This one's going to be a raya to Abaye Shlomi Das. Lo Aviyesh on the last line of Chabezim and Aleph. Oidehu heitel aleim. If while it is still on them, what is it? Rashi points out 6 lines to the bottom. Amale be'reisav ligag, when it brings up his fruit to the roof, and tal and dew goes on them. And we know that fruit, produce, only becomes roi lekabel toma, susceptible to become tamei if it becomes wet. So if someone puts his fruit on the roof, and while his fruit is still on the roof, what happens? V'samach, and he's happy. The owner is happy that his fruit got wet, as Rashi says, "Vital she'ar aleim," with the fruit, with the liquid that's on it. V'samach harei zeh b'chiyutan. It's included in kiyutan, meaning now it's mekabel tama. Now it's susceptible to become tamei. Nagvai. However, if the produce dried up before the owner realized, even if afterwards, subsequently, the owner is happy about it, still, it's not considered that it is ra'ui lekabel toma. So proves the Gemara from this Raisa time, what's the reason that once it's dried up, the owner's happiness can't help? Says Gemara, Lam Misham, is it not because on the top of Chavez and Aleph Tlei, I'm reading Kiv the Glei Milsa Dahashta Nichalei, for the fact that he showed us now that he's happy, Ikar Nami Nichalei, we can assume originally he is happy. We don't say that Svara. So we see, so too Bahiyash wants to say the Gemara, even though now we know when he finds out he is Miyayesh. But it doesn't show us originally he was going to be Miyayesh, and therefore Yesh Lami Das, Lo Yahavi Yesh. Says Gemara, no raya. Shiny asam dechsev ki yitain. Says the pasuk, if he places ad sheyitain, which means it's only if he himself places the liquid is the only time it's raya lekabel tama. Says Gemara, 1 second, yachi reishanami. But so in the first case, even when he found out while it's wet, why would that work? Explains the Gemara, hasam kidera papa, the papa rami. Rababa asks the contradiction, so is it that you have to place, or is that it shall be placed? Kiyutan, okay, tzad. Binan kiyutan, domya dechiyitin. Ma yitin ledas, av kiyutan nami ledas, din of das. But says the Gemara, you can't bring a raya from here to our case of yeshaloi midas. Continues the Gemara, Tashema. 8 lines down, the first line is Yutan, let's bring a raya. Damar Rav Yechon Mishum Reishma ben Yoitzadak. How do we know if an Aveda that the river swept away, Shehimu Teres, that you're allowed to use the item wherever finds it? The Chsiv says the pasuk. So you should do so too shall be done to your chamar, your donkey. So too shall be done to your clothing. So too should be done to any aveda that's lost from you. Matzasa and is found. So from here we darshan misha avude menu, only an item that's lost from you. And anyone can found it. This case excluded shavud menu. It's not found by all people. Why is it not found by all people? Because it was flooded away by the river. So says the Gemara in the case, which it's usher for the one that finds it, that he has to return it. It's similar to the case where it's mutter that he has to find it. Meaning what? Just like in the cases where he's allowed to keep it, it's whether is or is not a simin. Shari. Afisura being this be simin, being the less be simin isura. Must be that whether is or is not a simin, it is aser, meaning you have to return it. So says the Gemara, this works with a baya. Why does this work with a baya? Because yish shalai midas lo yish. It's not going to be a good yish, because even when he eventually finds out that he lost it and he's miyayish, it does not work retroactively. Whereas according to Rava, what would Rava hold? Yishlemidas have a yish. He would hold the person that find it. It's always called a yish, and therefore the one that found it, I don't care that it was shlemidas. He would be allowed to keep it. Says the Gemara, after this lengthy blot and a half, to Yofta, de Rava, to Yofta. Ve'hilchos l'kavasei d'Abaye. B'yal kigam, famously says the Gemara, we paskin like Abaye in the cases of yal kigam. And this is the first of the Al Kigam, which is Shia Shaloi Midas. We paskin like Rav Abaye, Loi Have Yish. Now that Rava has this kasha, says the Gemara, these wind blow days, how are you allowed to eat them? So Amar Le, Rav Ashi responded to Rachel, since there are bugs and creepy crawlers on the floor, they eat them. The owner is indeed miyayish. Another kasha, Yasmi Delavane Mechilin in Umai. What's the story with the Yisayimim that eat their items? Amar Le, Baga Da'ara Diyasmi, the land, the valley that has the land of Yisayimim, Loi Machsakina. We don't assume that it's a chazaka that belongs to them. What if we know it belongs to Yisayimim? Karkasa mai. What if there's a stone wall around it showing it belongs to Yisayimim? Amar Le, then Eina Chanami, then it would indeed be Aser. And that really ends off the first large sugya of this parak, which is Yish Shaloi Midas, Abaya Amar Lo Haviyash, Rava Amar Haviyash. And after all the kashas and rayas back and forth, we conclude that the halacha is like Abaye, Lo Haviyash. We do not assume there's Yish until practically the owner knows, finds out about it, and is Miyayish. We continue. We are about 2/3 down Chav Beis and Beis, the two dots. Now we go back to the case of the Mishnah of Rosh Hashanah. Hare elu she'eloi. We said if you find bundles in Rosh Hashanah, you're allowed to keep them. Says the Gemara, even if the item has a simin, you're still allowed to keep it. Alma, what's the reason? Says the Gemara. Must be that what does Rava hold? Alma kasava, Rabba. Alma kasava Rabba simin hasui lidaris. Loi have a simin. Because the simin is going to be trampled, these items are in the street, therefore it's not a good simin. That's the reason why you're allowed to keep it. Whereas on the other hand, that's Rava. My Rava disagrees, and he says, Loi shanu ela bedavar shein by simin, avol davar sheyesh by simin chayiv lahachres almu kesava Rava simin asilidares have a simin. So machlokes about Rabba and Rava whether simin is going to be trampled, whether it's good simin or not, and it concludes today's shir. And they learned that it's by itself. And now we bring a raya for the Mishnah. Eat less besim shiziyachim machris. There's no simon. Why are you now taking shiziyachim? Hell love this besim. Vikadam just ramay shalai can keep it. Alma simon asli dares lavi simon. Raya to Rabba to Yofta to Rava. Amar lacha Rava. Leilam de less besim and there's no kasha. Mitka amar shiziyachim my machris makaim. You know it's a place that it was found. Rava Amar makaim loy have a simon. And with this we're gonna pause. B'siyat Shmaya will pick it up, continuing discussing the sheet of Rava that the makom is not a simin in Mirza Hashem.